Colts and Browns this Sunday, 4:25. Kevin Bowen, Chris Presley back 2 days in a row, I guess.
Yeah.
Here on this edition of Kevin's Corner. I look at the Week 5 slate. I don't think there's a better game out there than Colts and Browns. I saw Titans-Bills, and obviously we'll see what happens with that game as we get into the back half of the week. But in all seriousness, man, Colts-Browns, I really think is going to be a very good football game, and I think that's where the eyes should be.
I know that's where our eyes are going to be. Thursday night, not too bad. You get to see Tom Brady again.
Yeah, what's that? Is that Bears?
Bears and Bucks.
And
yeah.
next week, I think, is Chiefs and Bills, if I'm not mistaken, on Thursday night. So we're finally out of the old Brett Rippon toilet bowl action we've gotten the past few weeks. So,
yes, it is Chiefs.
So, yeah. 4:25 kick again, Colts at Browns. They'll play the Bengals then a week from Sunday, and then the bye week. So we'll stick to kind of our 2 podcasts a week here for next week as well, and then bye week, I don't know, probably only one then, and then it gets really, really difficult for the second half of the NFL season. So, today's podcast will obviously preview the Browns a little bit. Not a ton of Twitter questions to get to, and we'll hear a little bit from Chris Ballard as well. But I'm looking forward to Sunday, man. I think it's a I don't think, when I look at the schedule right now, I can't confidently say that any team the Colts have played will be in the playoffs. Like, I don't want to bet with my money. Hell, I don't even know if I want to bet with your money that the Bears are even going to make the playoffs. And I know they're 3-1, and they probably are, I don't know, in the playoffs if it were to start today. But I just don't see that. And then you get a little deeper into it, and I don't even know if Cleveland is going to make the playoffs. But it is still a better measuring. It's by far the best offense that you've played. Really good offensive line as well. So last week you kind of played a better defense. This week you kind of play a better offense. Mm-hmm. Now you mesh those two together, and it's like, all right, we're starting to get a little bit more playoff-level caliber football here for this Colts team, and I'm excited to see them on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, do you have a preference when it comes to game times? Are you do you like the afternoon slot?
Yeah, someone was one of my buddies was texting me like, oh, 4:25, Kev, you got to love that or whatever. And I'm like, well, it gives me, or maybe he said you got to hate that. I kind of forget now that I'm thinking about it. It gives me more of a morning, certainly, and early afternoon as well.
Right. And
obviously I can just kind of watch the 1 o'clock games, whereas the 1 o'clock, you miss out on all the other 1 o'clock games if you're Colts play at 1. And then the 4:25 games, you're working pretty much the whole time during the 4:25. So, I watched the Browns, I watched the Bucks and Chargers a lot last week. So 4:25, if I had a preference, just because, I get a lot of Rosie time in during the day, and then, she goes to bed at 7:30 anyway, so it's not like I'm hanging with her after the game by any means. I can just kind of work, but it does make quick turnaround for morning radio the next day and podcast. So I think there's one more 4 o'clocker, if I'm not mistaken, for the Colts right now on the schedule. There's still that Texans game later in the year, which is supposed to be, I think, the same weekend as Big Ten championships at Lucas Oil, the Big Ten football championship, that is, and Crossroads Classic as well. So I don't know, with how the Texans have played, that might be a Sunday 1 o'clocker. This is a bit abnormal to see the Colts with this many 4 o'clock kicks, because I think, now 3 of the last 4 weeks? Yeah, Jets.
Yeah.
Jets was 4, and then obviously last week you had COVID ramifications.
Yeah, because you talk about after the game, you have to work. Anything that we should be looking for coming up on 107.5 The Fan? Any stories you're working on?
This week I posted Julian Blackman one go up on Monday. We had a look at the defense and just the remarkable turnaround that they've had since that season opener as well. What did I post? I think I'm going to do an offensive line story maybe for tomorrow. I just got back from Colts practice. We'll go over some of the injuries. It's probably the ugliest looking injury report of the season so far. I also posted 10 takeaways. I forgot about that. 10 takeaways from the first quarter of the season. I'll try to do that at every kind of quarter mark here in 2020. So, posted that earlier today. And then we heard from Chris Ballard as well.
We did, because Chris Ballard, I believe, comes on about once a quarter.
Yeah, he does that on his Monday night show. The Colts have the Monday night show. Used to be the Bill Polian show. But Frank Reich is typically the guest on that, but Chris Ballard comes on. And I guess let's touch on a few of those things there that kind of stood out to me. He was asked about the rookie class. he mentioned how Michael Pittman was kind of coming on, he felt like, before the injury in that Jets game. And then he also talked about Isaiah Rodgers and that he feels like, him at kick returner is close to breaking one. And we're starting to see more of Rodgers at kick returner, which I'm fine with. It's kind of like, all right, is it going to be Campbell? Is it going to be Hines? And Campbell's gone, and now Hines has a bigger offensive role. So I'm as long as Rodgers can hold on to it, it's another part of the game where you can sneak 8 to 10 yards. And I think that's how we have to look at special teams. And I know maybe I kind of carry a torch for special teams more than most, but when Rigoberto, pins a punt inside the 5, look at that as like a 17-yard gain. If that punt is at the 3-yard line and Ashton Doolin runs down there, Rigoberto Sanchez has theoretically thrown a pass to Ashton Doolin and gained 17 yards. That ball goes in the end zone, now it's at the 20.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's how you look at Isaiah Rodgers at kick return. If you bring it out and you get to the 32, you've gained 7 yards because the touchback in the NFL is at the 25 for kickoff. So, I thought that was interesting that he mentioned Rodgers there, kind of coming on a little bit more. Defense, it's so funny. Chris, was the one that made the hire of Matt Eberflus. He really wanted this scheme. He felt like in an indoor setting, speed and kind of high effort is really what you want. And I think I remember him saying, there's not a lot of 3-4 defenses that win Super Bowls, which was kind of an interesting note, and it is something when you look into 3-4. I think indoor teams is not not the style of defense that you think of winning Super Bowls. But he basically is just like, we simply are going to do what we do and do that better than. It's a very simplistic way of talking about this defense. He didn't really admit there's been a whole lot of changes. There have been a whole lot of changes. I mean, other people in our organization have said that. I don't know if Chris, for some reason, I guess maybe just doesn't want to say that as publicly, but there has been schematic changes for that. And I also thought it was interesting, and I posted that in the defensive article on Tuesday, I think it was. I had a quote in there from Phillip Rivers about what stands out to Rivers about this defense, because Rivers he's such an insightful guy, and really I think gives a pretty honest opinion about a lot of topics. And he said the thing that kind of struck him the most during training camp was how they run to the football. And I know that can be a very just kind of basic high schoolish thing, but I do think we are starting to see more and more of that, and it affords the opportunity of, if you miss one tackle, someone else is there. And I think the more you just are, kind of forcing people to run to the football, guys feel more comfortable, guys feel like they're almost doing something, they have confidence in their role, and over the course of a game, course of a season, that is an element to this defense that, I always, kind of gave a little nod to. I don't think it's certainly the most diverse thing and the crazy schematic thing. I still think you can sprinkle that in. But having that core belief as a defense makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah. So, Chris really hit on that. He had some comments about Mo Alley-Cox, DeForest Buckner, you guys can check out as well on 107.5. And then just lastly, he mentioned, just going back to what he said at the end of last year, that he failed his coaching staff with not giving them enough depth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look right now, think about it. Burton 3 games, Mack 3 games, Campbell a couple games, Hooker obviously a couple games. I know I'm missing other guys in there. Your depth has been tested a whole lot here early on in the season, and whereas last year you lost 7 of 9 when you needed some of that depth to show up, this year you're winning football games. And I think the key metric to look at, Chris, and I get this, so often right now. And part of me, when the schedule came out in May, I was like, and I'm pretty sure I said this on the podcast, I was like, all right, I see this schedule. Great opportunity to get some wins early, but I'm not sure we're going to have a great gauge on this team in January until about November, which just kind of sucks. But that's the reality of the schedule. Now, having said that, you can still show some signs that make you feel better, and that this 3-1 is different than last year's 5-2. And I think that's what we talked about on Monday. That point differential is the biggest thing right now for me.
Right.
The Colts are plus 47 in point differential right now. That's the third highest in the NFL. I think Baltimore and Green Bay, just by a couple points, the only two teams that are higher than that. So again, when you are dominating on the scoreboard like that, that to me is like, okay, you aren't playing with fire with 9 straight one-possession games to start the year, and you are sound in some areas that you weren't as sound in last year. And sure, is this defense going to keep up a historic run to start the season? No. Is the offense going to be as poor as they've been run game-wise and situationally? Probably not. You would expect those areas to get better, considering they are kind of strengths, especially the run game. So, and I do this a lot from like, I'm such a big Notre Dame basketball fan, and they win all these non-conference games over, cupcakes and whatnot, and you're always like, man, are they good? Oh, wow, 13-1. Oh, my gosh. Like, and then it's like, oh, wait. No, it all depends on what they do in the Crossroads Classic, what do they do in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, how they played in Maui. It's like very selective of like, I feel like the team can get in the tournament. Can they win a first-round game? Can they get to the second weekend? Like those things. And that's how I look at the Colts right now. They can get in this dance. Yeah. I have no doubt about that right now, 4 weeks into the season. There are some signs that are like, man, I think they can win a game, but there are certainly some other things where I'm like, all right, still need to see better tests, and obviously that'll come. And I know that's tough for like a lot of fans that they just want this. What do you think? What do you is this real? Is this a fluke? What are you seeing? I'm probably leaning towards there are more signs of real, more than last year. Last year I was a huge skeptic all through that 7-game start. I'm less of a skeptic now, but I still am not going to put it into this mic of this is a team that's going to win multiple games in January. There are still a couple of things to be checked, and that's why you've got 12 more games to go.
Right. And just back to your original point, talking about Ballard's quote, and I know some of the things aren't necessarily positive in regard to why players have played. You got the opt-outs, you got the injuries. But for him to name so many rookies, looking at it from an optimistic standpoint, then I see that they're drafting guys that are NFL ready pretty much from day one.
Yeah, and the guys that are obviously coming from different backgrounds, too. I mean, Rodgers played for the worst defense in the NFL or in college football last year at UMass. And now, he's not necessarily helping you out on defense, but, he is giving you something on special teams right now. And your depth's going to be tested potentially like no other this week with where your injury situation is currently at. So, 30th ranked schedule, it is what it is. But again, you have shown me some signs early on in how you have controlled these games that I'm like, okay, this isn't just, skin of your teeth, all these one-possession, heart-stopping fourth quarters. This is, Jacoby Brissett played a couple series in a game, and, the Bears are having a flukish touchdown to try and somehow, backdoor their way into a cover or whatnot. Like, it's just there's less game pressure on the Colts in 3 of these 4 games so far in the fourth quarter. Now, I think it's a good thing to have a little bit more game pressure on you because inevitably that's what's going to happen in January. You're going to play games that are tighter. And I do think starting Sunday, honestly, I would be surprised if Sunday, even though I think Cleveland has such a stigma against them that it's hard for me to even get out of my head, I would be surprised if Sunday turns into what we've seen the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Don't have many Twitter questions, but we want to start there.
Yeah.
Get into those. This first one comes from Austin. Ask, do you know how well the Colts are following social distancing as an organization? With teams having outbreaks like the Titans and the Patriots, could you see the Super Bowl possibly coming down to the team who follow the precautions the best?
Boy, Austin, it's a great question. Obviously, it's been kind of the news of the week right now. To be fair, I don't know if I call the Patriots an outbreak yet. Yes, it's prominent players, but they still played a football game. And as of right now, it looks like they're going to play a football game this Sunday. We'll see how that develops. The Titans, certainly you would consider that an outbreak. The Colts haven't had a positive test in over 2 months from their players. That's extremely impressive. There are several teams that fall into that category. So I think there are a lot of teams out there that should be commended for that. And at times, I think this can kind of cloud the picture of how well the NFL is doing as a whole. Tennessee clearly had some issues. I know a lot of people are screaming forfeit. I think that's a lot easier said than done. What does that mean? You give Buffalo a win.
Yeah.
How are you like? And I think when the Titans had this kind of off-site practice, I'm pretty sure the protocols weren't necessarily in place to say you can't do that, or a forfeit would be a type of punishment that could develop, from breaking these protocols, whatnot in there. So, yeah, I mean, there is certainly a level of it's going to come down to the teams who do follow these precautions. I also know full well that, not every Colts player is following everything like to the nth degree by the book, like, everyone's grandma or grandpa should be following these. And as we know full well, this can be a very kind of freak thing. You can have minimal exposure and all of a sudden it's spreading like none other. You could go to a huge event. I've been to a couple weddings this year. I've been to a bachelor party, and knock on wood, I seemingly have not had it. I like to think I was taking the right steps at those events, but still, there are times when I wasn't, locked up in my house in my basement or whatnot. So I don't know, man. It's tough. Part of me says, why do you have these expanded practice squads and you're not using them? I get Tennessee's situation is a little different because they still are having positive tests, and I think you've got to corral that. But if you have multiple days negative and you're practicing, you've got to play. And I know that might sound harsh, but again, why are you putting more people in your building with these expanded practice squads and then not using them?
Yeah.
You're theoretically exposing the 53-man roster to more risk if you're going to up this practice squad, to 16 people this season. So I think that's something the NFL's got to figure out. There's way too much gray area right now in what is allowed when you are away from your team facility and it is shut down. Because think about it, when Tennessee did this offsite scrimmage, the NFL still hadn't canceled the game for Sunday. And, I mean, Ryan Tannehill, it sounds like, was there. I mean, there's probably a level of him guys, we have a job to do.
Yeah.
And let's all go to practice field. Let's whatever, try and get some work in, and hopefully, we aren't going to spread it. But if we lose, we're going to get ripped because, whatever, we didn't take it serious enough or whatnot. I know I don't have the right answer, and there's a lot of people probably disagree with what I'm saying, but it's tough, man. This is a huge sacrifice that these NFL players are making. I still stand by. There's no way this could be done in a bubble. There's no way the players would accept being in a bubble. The NBA environment, I think, is much, much different than the NFL. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't have a great answer, but I know the Colts are a very high-character football team with a lot of self-disciplined guys, and you have to love that. And, the results are the results. And it's like, wow, man, the Colts are doing a lot of things right. But then I'm thinking, one of Phillip Rivers' 9 kids comes home with COVID from school and hugs dad. How flukish is that? So it's just a very tough thing to be like, the Titans are misbehaving, the Colts are not. Yes, I'm sure there's a little bit of that, but at the end of the day, this is a good amount of luck that's probably involved as well.
Absolutely. This one comes from Scott. He says, "Hey fellas, do you think that we were pushing the ball a little bit too much to Burton and not pass to Mo after the first drive? Things seemed forced, and I didn't see much Mo Alley-Cox, or did I just miss something?"
I mean, he played a decent amount. I would say him and Burton played pretty similar snap counts, but yeah, I mean, if you look at the stat sheet afterwards, 5 targets for Burton and 2 for Mo Alley. Obviously, the 2 to Mo Alley were very noticeable targets, touchdown and an interception that was overturned. I thought it was too much force feeding to Burton, and this comes from a guy that likes Burton. I mean, I do, and I think he should and will be a big focal point of this offense, but I'm like, wait, this guy's practiced twice, and he's going to have the second most targets on the football team? That was, wow, that's a really high amount. I think Mo Alley-Cox is he's got to be more involved. He has got to be a guy that you look at him and saying, we need a defense to feel like there's some level of game plan against him because he has shown the ability to stretch the field vertically and be involved in the red zone and things like that. And the Colts just don't have anyone else here in 2020 that has done that on a consistent basis. So, Frank mentioned today they really felt like the tight ends could be involved a lot in that Bears game. They didn't have a whole lot of production outside of the Mo touchdown. But, yeah, I think moving forward it's, maybe it's less targets to a guy like Jack Doyle. And I know he hasn't been targeted a whole lot this year, but, when Pittman went down, was pretty adamant. Okay, Burton, I think, is the guy that will see kind of his
Right.
targets probably more than anything. But yeah, I want to see Mo Alley get a few more. Even just a nice simple screen and be like, all right, go tackle 6'5", 267 pounds in the open field and see if you can get something, 7-8 yards like that.
Next one's from Zach. 2 takeaways from the first quarter of the season. First one being that Frank Reich seems to take Taylor off the field during short yard and goal line situations more than you would think. Secondly, the offensive line is actually better at pass blocking than they are at run blocking, and I think it's fair to say really just above average at run blocking. I was curious your thoughts.
Yeah, Zach, I don't know if I would really call the run blocking above average right now. It's I've taken this is probably what I've spent the most on this week has been kind of the run game, taking a much closer look at things right now. And Nick Sirianni was saying on Tuesday he's really pleased with the run game, and I'm like, wait, is that just an offensive coordinator afraid to call out a unit comment? And I'm like, and the Colts seem to be pretty protective of their 32nd ranking in yards per carry, and mentioned the kneel downs and mentioned the 4-minute offense, which again, all fair things that we acknowledged on Monday, but this is 32nd ranked. This is not 22nd ranked. And then you throw in the 4-minute offense, kneel downs. Okay, now you're middle of the pack. And still middle of the pack for this offensive line, you would not call successful.
Correct.
You would not call a major positive for this team early in the season. So I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, if the kneel downs and the 4-minute offense situations where teams load in the box with you, if you feel like that is skewing this number, let's go look at the first half. First half, you're not in 4-minute offense, and you don't really kneel the ball down. If you kneel it in the first half, you maybe do it one time.
Right.
Colts running backs are 3.8 per carry in the first half. That's not good.
No.
That is not good enough for this offensive line. So I will totally disagree, honestly, with where the Colts stand on this and their feelings about their offensive line right now. The run blocking has not been good enough. I've taken, again, deeper looks at the analytical sites of, if you look at, there's a couple stats that I find interesting. If you look at time spent behind the line of scrimmage, just again, very kind of next gen sort of running back stat, I think it's Wilkins is 4th right now in the NFL, most time spent behind the line of scrimmage. I think Hines is 8th, and I want to say Jonathan Taylor's 19th, and there's 47 running backs that qualify. So, hell, you got 3 running backs in the top half, and Wilkins and Hines are in the top 10. So, time spent behind the line of scrimmage to me is they don't know where the holes are. Either the holes aren't there, or they're a little bit not 100% sold on where these holes are. And then the other stat is just adjusted or offensive line creating yards for their backs. And this is a football outsider stat. And the Colts rank, I think, 5th worst in the NFL at that. So, and especially up the middle is really where they've struggled as well. So I will, I will, stand by. I don't think the run blocking has been good enough at all for you. And you really haven't hit on the big play in the run game either, which I felt like that was something of why you drafted Jonathan Taylor. I think there's only been one run over 20 yards this season, which is not something I would have expected at this point. So, Frank commented on the second and long runs today and pretty much said that, he felt like that was something to where I'm thinking we'll get more open field coverages on a little bit second and long because the defense thinks, oh, this is more of a passing down for them. You might have a lighter box. It should be theoretically easier to run. Obviously, they've struggled in that area. Frank mentioned, just tendencies even out over the course of the season, and it's something that he looks at a ton. And Nick Sirianni mentioned that as well. And I kind of hit on that on Monday of this team is anal about making sure their tendencies do not tip hands.
Right.
So it's are they going the reverse right now? And then we're going to see a huge counter where they ran it 7 times on second and long on Sunday. Are you going to see the flip against Cleveland? Something like that. So, yeah, I just flat out, I just don't think the run blocking has been good enough. We've talked about Taylor's vision a little bit as well. It's a unit that I think is super frustrating right now because they've been healthy. and now potentially they've hit their first injury here in
Right.
Anthony Costanzo. So, yeah, Zach, I kind of forget what you asked now that you said it, but he's taking Taylor off the field in short yardage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Taylor had what, 17 carries, Hines had 9, Wilkins had 9. Short yardage in particular is where the Colts have been really, really poor.
Yes.
And to me, that is such a establish the offensive line down more so than a running back down. Taylor, from a carry standpoint, I'm fine with how many touches he's got. What, he had 26 that week 1, 13, I think it was, and 17. I mean, that's not. I thought he'd hover right around 15 to 20 once Mac went down. So, yeah, maybe a little bit more in short yardage. But the O-line, and again, what we said on Monday, great in pass protection. Really, really good there. But the run blocking has not been good enough.
Right. Next one's from Loop. Is it just me, or does this season, more than most at any rate, seem like the NFL is a war of attrition? To hoist the Lombardi, it might not be may the best man win. It may be may the most men win. If so, how does that change your championship picks?
Well, it's hard to predict injuries. So, it's hard for me to be like, okay, that team is going to have a COVID outbreak or whatever. They're going to get really banged up. So, now having said that, I do kind of agree with you. Now, some people would say this is the NFL every season. But I do feel like when you've seen more of the COVID stuff ramp up this week, it does feel like survival.
Yes.
Who can get there to the end and feel like they have some sort of a championship level roster. And it goes back to the Chris Ballard depth comment from earlier. You're looking, today's healthy linebackers at practice were Anthony Walker, purely healthy. Anthony Walker, Zaire Franklin, and Jordan Glasgow.
Yeah.
It's
a big hit.
Right. Darius Leonard's not practicing. Bobby Okereke isn't practicing. And I should say, as we are recording this, the official injury report hasn't come out yet, but that was at least in front of the media. And EJ Speed had a red jersey on. So, can your depth withstand it when the level of competition starts to rise? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I do. And I seriously mean it from a high character standpoint and the self-motivation factor of a lot of these players on the roster. I do think the Colts have a big advantage there. Does that mean you're not going to get COVID the whole year? No, of course not. But I do think it is something that is at least notable of that should give fans, I think, a little bit more of confidence in their football team that, they're not acting like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah. This one's from RT Smooth in reference to a question yesterday on the pod about Matt Ryan possibly coming here. You said you don't see it. He doesn't either. But would you consider replacing Rivers with a Dak Prescott? Feels like he's young, able, underappreciated, and it's a walk year. Do you see enough in Eason to not want Dak long term? Would have to give him $35 to $40 million per.
Yeah, obviously we've had this question, on prior pods, but I would say this: I don't know how you could see anything in Jacob Eason that would impact your quarterback decision. Jacob Eason is not front of mind for me in making this quarterback decision. It's a nice grooming option, but in no way, shape, or form is what I'm seeing Jacob Eason do on scout team going to influence whether I think he can be the franchise quarterback for me moving forward. This is going to be a heavily invested decision, as we saw this weekend with Ed Dodds going to watch Trey Lance. Again, you're not mincing words with that action. You know full well you're sending him up there because you're going to do something substantial at quarterback in the very near future, either in April, or if you think Rivers can run it back for another year, then maybe you're going to do it next April. With Dak, it just really, really ties you contractually. And I have this kind of, there's just a negative, I have a negative stereotype, Chris, with quarterbacks that have been somewhere else. And sure, Tannehill has turned into more of the top 10, talent that he was drafted to be for the Dolphins. But, there's just not a lot of quarterbacks that have started. Breeze didn't really start. I guess started a little bit, but his was more, I think, injury-related when he left.
Correct.
And went over to the Saints, and, hell, could have been a Miami Dolphin there in free agency. The whole, oh my gosh, what about Dwayne Haskins now that he's been benched? What about Sam Darnold? What about here with Dak, Kirk Cousins? It's I just don't think the ceiling is as high there. and you're still getting some sort of damaged goods.
You feel like that's the Band-Aid that you referred to on the other podcast?
Yes. Yeah, and maybe not just like I'm putting makeup over something that probably needs a whole lot of surgery on.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's if you really want to try and get the most you can out of that position. To me, it's not the Dak. It's not the Haskins, the Darnold, whatever. I'd rather you come into my system, we mold. Your clay, mold, and then financially, you're in a really nice position still for 4 to 5 years to where you're not crazily invested a whole lot at the quarterback position. And I can support you. You know, if all of a sudden, you know, you're paying Nelson and you're paying Leonard, now you got Dak's, you know, contract sitting there as well. If you don't hit on those rookie draft picks, you're totally screwed.
Yeah.
So it's nothing really against Dak, but I just have a retread scar tissue issue, if you will, with kind of retread quarterbacks. And sometimes I know that that's kind of the only route you can go, like theoretically this past year. The Colts didn't feel like they were going to find a rookie quarterback that they'd want to come in here and start from day one. So, and you know, so far, I would say Rivers has without question been better than what Jacoby was last year for you.
Last questions from Primus says that he's heard a lot of talking heads dismiss the Colts defense, who's allowing 14 points per game, by citing their opponents. Those teams have scored 24.6 points per game against their opponents. Nice little quote here says, "Don't dismiss a lion because you've only seen it kill goats." Thoughts?
Wow. Read that quote again for me.
Don't dismiss a lion because you've only seen it kill goats.
Gosh. Primus. You got to have a name like that to be uttering a quote like that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, shit. I need that above the toilet each morning, just kind of getting the day started with that one. I think it's a really good point. Now, you know, to be fair, there's been some mop-up point situations with some of those teams, but still, I think it is something to where it falls in the reasons for me of why I have hope of like, yeah, you know, you haven't just played a bunch of offenses that are scoring 6 every game or 9 every game.
Right.
You have seen these teams do something, and I would say Minnesota probably more than any of them. I know they had the mop-up against Green Bay, but, you know, against Houston, they scored early in that game. So, there is a level of just like you have to play what is in front of you. But and again, I'm commending the Colts big time for being 3-1. Like that is a very good record. You're in position to make the playoffs. You've done historic things on the defensive side of the ball, which stand out to me more than anything else. But we can look at it from both sides and realize that this is the 30th ranked schedule. And that, like I said earlier, in no way am I sitting here right now and saying, Chicago Bears playoff team, bank it, Rosie's preschool, you know, put it on there.
Mm-hmm.
No. Cleveland, no way. I mean, they're the Browns. Like, they've had a really nice start to the year. Some very good pieces, talented team. Their offensive line all of a sudden looks totally different than the one that got just ripped to shreds at Grand Park last year when the Colts had them here for joint practices. But again, I'm not your first round opponent. I mean, think about it right now. The Colts, I think, I believe they're 5th in the AFC.
That's yeah.
So the 1 seed gets the bye, so it'd be 2-6, 3-5. So maybe the Colts would play, I don't know, Buffalo or Baltimore in that first round game. And Buffalo and Baltimore ain't Minnesota. They're not Chicago. They're not the Jets. Like, they're just, when you get into the postseason, it's just a different animal. So getting to the postseason, though, is obviously a goal and something you need to get done. To get that done, you got to win football games. The Colts have done that so far. They've won 3 of 4. Their defense has done things we never saw them do multiple weeks in a row. There is hope there, and don't dismiss a lion because you've only seen it kill goats. That's great. Unfortunately, there's no goats in January, and we're going lowercase goats. We're not going, all caps goats. That's just the issue when you look forward, big picture there. I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
I feel like it's been one of my worst podcasts of all time.
Why?
I don't know, man. It just feels sloppy.
Oh.
Yeah?
Don't let us know in the comments if it is.
No, they will. 100%. Oh, man. They love the rip, which is great. It's great.
Well, that wraps up Twitter questions.
Okay. All right. What do we got now?
Let's get to the 3 keys.
Yes.
Let's talk about what we can do to win this game on Sunday.
Boy, it's a big one, man. Yeah, I was texting a little bit with Andrew Barry, Browns GM. Used to be here at the Colts. Just a great human being. I'm like, holy, you guys got some dudes in the trenches. Their O-line, Chris. Jedrick Wills, they took the kid out of Alabama.
Right.
He's a rookie tackle. They got Jack Conklin in free agency. I mean, there's 2 former top 15 picks. J.C. Treader, who was the head of the NFLPA, pretty solid center. Joel, whatever the hell his last name is, Batonio or whatever his name is. High second-round pick. And then their other guard, Wyatt Teller, has been this just unbelievable find for them. He is the highest-rated guard on Pro Football Focus right now. No one's ever heard of him until this year. I'm like, wow, it's a really good 5-man unit. And when Nick Chubb goes out on Sunday, they still carve up a bunch of rushing yards against Dallas. So I think establishing the line of scrimmage is my biggest key. Obviously, I just rattled off their O-line. This is going to be, I think, one of the better O-lines you face, and much different than the O-line you saw at training camp last year. Bill Callahan, former Raiders coach, is their O-line coach. I mean, I think they've kind of obviously new coaching staff this year. So it's much different. And then when I say establishing line of scrimmage, I'm talking about both sides. Because right now, as we record this, Anthony Costanzo does not look like he practiced today. Very rare to see AC miss a practice. We've seen him miss a full week of practice and still playing a game. So this will be a long sort of drawn-out Friday afternoon sort of ordeal. I knew something was up, Chris, though, when Frank Reich started his Wednesday presser and goes, yeah, as far as injuries, I'll just let the injury report do the talking. I'm like, okay. I'm just like, I can tweet right now. No Costanzo, no Leonard at practice. Like, you just kind of knew something was up. So I've gone back. I've watched it, trying to find out where Costanzo gets hurt on Sunday. He doesn't play the last 4 snaps of the game. That final weird, you ran it on first down, then you took 3 kneels. LaRaven Clark was in there. And you are facing, the guy that had Adam Schefter tweeting assault last year on Sunday afternoon. And that would be Myles Garrett. All jokes aside, the dude looks like the #1 overall pick. Leads the league right now in sacks, tied, I think, with homeboy from Green Bay with 5. Just a stud. And if Anthony Costanzo, for some reason, is not in the lineup, I have a feeling Myles Garrett will put his hand in the dirt opposite LaRaven Clark on first down, on second down, probably on third down. Maybe do it on the next series and do it on the next.
Yeah, he's a freak.
So this is huge. This is why I think Costanzo's the most indispensable player on this football team. There's a trickle-down effect. Phillip Rivers already gets the ball out quick. He might get it out even quicker on Sunday with Garrett in the game. And you've kind of flirted with it a couple times so far. The Minnesota game, Ngakoue gets a sack, the ball's on the ground, you're able to pounce on it. Okay, crisis averted. Last week, Rivers gets hit, ball's in the air, Khalil Mack, oh my gosh,
right.
He looks like, God bless her, my niece Ellen Lover is trying to catch a ball in the backyard. I mean, it's just, if one of those goes the other way, totally can change the whole course of the game. And the Colts, dominate field position, do not. So establishing line of scrimmage is key number 1. Key number 2, can't be settling for 3. And I do think this is going to change. I think the Colts are going to be a better red zone team. I do. But Cleveland has the potency to score. Chicago did not.
Right.
So it doesn't have like a Kansas City feel to it. Like that. That'd be ludicrous to put Cleveland in that category. But it's like, you don't want to settle for 3. And the worst thing is this. You settle for 3, and then in a little wind coming off Lake Erie or something like that, then you miss it, and now field position is all screwed up. Now, Blankenship, outstanding on Sunday because he's making kicks that Vinatieri did not make last year. So kudos to the to Rex Bex, but cannot settle for 3. I did like to hear from Frank Reich, and this is what I do like about Frank, among several things I do like about him. He mentioned how his play calling, his game management, his level of aggression was a little bit scaled back against Chicago. I mean, it's the Bears.
Right.
He admitted today it probably will have to be ramped up a little bit more because, again, you got to finish drives. You've got to continue to put points on the board because Cleveland is a team that, yes, week 1, they got absolutely drilled by Baltimore. Week 2 and 3, they don't really play anybody great, but still, they scored over 30 points. That's notable.
Yeah.
And then obviously they did to Dallas what they did. So you can't be settling for 3. And then lastly, just don't let OBJ dance too much. When he starts dancing in the end zone, that's not good. You have enough to deal with their run game. You don't want him to get going. Now, him and Xavier Rhodes have history. Monday night game, I think this was right around the whole OBJ kicking over the net several years ago. I think Rhodes was in much more of a shadow role then, and 3 catches for like 25 yards for OBJ in that game. So I don't think, again, this will be a shadow role. Allen Robinson, even before he had the, kind of crazy catches he had in that last drive, he still did something against you. So, where are you at right now just in taking away number one wideout? Knowing that, honestly, him and Landry, it's probably one of the better duos you're going to see all year. I know Jarvis Landry's not the same Jarvis Landry, but he's still somebody.
I was going to say that, there's still another guy across the way that can do damage as well.
That's not, me. Did you see Landry's touchdown throw?
I didn't.
Against Dallas?
I got to go back and watch. I heard it was crow hopped into it, didn't he?
He looked like a center fielder trying to throw somebody out at home. It was like, can you not get the ball to the end zone? And then throw a strike. I'm like, all right, if Baker screws up, add his name to the long list of, the shirt of all the quarterbacks that have started for the Browns. So, yeah, if they both get going, now all of a sudden 30 points becomes a reality. And I'm not sure if the Colts can do that. That's, kind of going back to my earlier point. The Colts have won with defense this year. That is something that gives me hope of like, okay, this 3-1 is not flukish.
Mm-hmm.
What you're worried about, or I should say it's more of an unknown. I also have worry. Have they won with offense? Or have they won coming back? Have they won with a 17-point second half?
Yeah.
A fourth quarter drive? Those are all scenarios that inevitably develop over the course of a 16-game season. That will be another hurdle to kind of clear playoff-wise. So, those are the 3 keys for me.
Okay. Prediction time.
So you have done a great job of sneaking out of predictions the last couple of weeks. Your feet is to the fire, Chris Presley. I need a score. Colts, Browns, Sunday, 4:25. So far, I've picked the Colts in every game, by the way.
I know, and I don't want to be a homer, but at the same time, I don't want people to think, how can this guy pick the Browns? But
Colts are 2.5, last I saw.
Favorite?
I'm wondering if the injuries, though, they might go down. I saw David Njoku could be back for the Browns this week, too.
Yeah, that would be big for them. Like you said, the injury report's going to be big. If we come out healthy, let's say that, or even if we're only missing one player of note that we talked about earlier in the podcast, I still think we lose 24-17.
Chris Presley on Twitter, folks. You can find him if you want to message him and rip him. He lives. I won't say where he lives, but I got Browns 27-24.
Okay.
I just think the injury situation probably is the difference for me. And again, we'll see how this plays out the rest of the week. To me, you mentioned if one of those guys is out, it's the difference. I think if Costanzo's out, it's the difference. You can win without Leonard. And I know that some people will be like, oh, man, that's kind of a quick slap in the face. When I did the most indispensable Colts earlier in the year, Costanzo was one on that list for me. I don't think I had Leonard top 5, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I had him at 5 just because of a few game-changing plays and had like Kenny Moore kind of below him. But so far, we haven't seen a whole lot of the game-changing plays yet from Leonard. Now, I will say this. If Leonard's out, you really want Okereke to play.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden, he had the thumb surgery, it sounded like. Part of me is like, can you club it up and see if he can give it a go? But, that's me sitting in a chair and acting like NFL guys, should be tougher or whatnot. So I just think, and maybe, 4 games is too small of a sample size, but the Colts are 3-1 in games without Leonard. They're certainly not 3-1 in games without Anthony Costanzo.
Right.
And there's just the trickle-down effect of when you don't have Costanzo in the lineup and then Clark's in there. So we're going to have to see how these injuries play out. Obviously, without Leonard, this is a game where I would be more okay without Leonard because I don't think he's as good of a run in between the tackle, smash mouth linebacker as maybe he is an in-space linebacker. So, like, I'd rather have him for Baltimore. I'd rather have him for Houston when you're facing Watson. Cleveland's going to pretty much run it at you. And, okay, Anthony Walker can kind of get his hat. I mean, Anthony Walker had 11 tackles in, like, 2.5 quarters last week. I mean, Leonard, and I know tackles aren't everything. Leonard had 1 tackle when he exited the game. I mean, the game was a quarter and a half in, and only 1 tackle? That's very un-Leonard-like. So, I just think, sure, you'd rather have both of them, of course. And if Okariki's out, then all of a sudden Leonard's loss is really big. But if you're going to, like, just give me Leonard or Costanzo, I'd take Costanzo 10 days out of 10. So, a little game pressure on both teams, though. And that's something we haven't seen. I mean, Cleveland, they didn't really have game pressure on him Sunday. Sure, no. Dallas acted like it was interesting, but, they were going to win that game. I think I saw a stat. Mayfield's thrown 6 passes in the fourth quarter during their 3-game win streak. And, I mean, think about the meaningful passes Rivers has thrown in the fourth quarter. It's just kind of an unknown. I think the Cleveland Browns stigma is still there for me. So I was thinking Colts, and then I walked out to practice and thought, okay, I'm going to flip this. But yeah, I pretty much think this is a pick'em game. And I expect it to probably be pick'em close to.
And I think at some point, as much as I love Blackman, I've said it on Twitter numerous times, our fans love him so much. This, to me, will be one of the first times we see an offense that may be able to make, we talked about how instinctual he is, mix up a read, and they get behind him on a deep pass.
And this is the most dynamic challenge he's faced. Mm-hmm. You pretty much knew the ceiling of the Jets. You knew the ceiling of Chicago for the most part as well. This is going to be different. Mm-hmm. So, and this is good. Like, this is what the Colts... A Colts loss Sunday is probably not going to get me, freaking out too much. Is it, again, a little bit more indicative of, okay, that's kind of playoff-like competition? Sure, but from a record standpoint, I mean, I've said it all along. If you're 5-2 I always think of the bye. I forgot they have the Lions after the bye. If you're 5-2 after the Lions, you're in a good position to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Ryan Grigson Bowl as well.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan Grigson Sr. Let me see if I have this title right. I want to say he's a senior football advisor.
That's just like, we'll give you a title that you can just get a business card for.
Cleveland senior football advisor, Ryan Grigson. So there you go. I can't wait. 4:25 on Sunday. You got anything else?
I don't.
Like I said, we are going to have a Beers with Bowen. Let's go ahead and tell them the date. Pencil it in your calendar. The night before the Colts travel to Nashville, take on the Titans. That will be November 11th, 8 p.m. I think we're going to stick with.
We are.
And that'll be fun. It'll be kind of a mix of certainly a heavy Titans preview and where the Colts that's exactly the midway point of the season. 8 games will be done by that point for the Colts. So we'll give out some midseason awards and whatnot. But I also want to always take a look ahead. We'll look at kind of all the free agents that the Colts have as well for 2021, and we'll kind of make a rundown on that. So, again, November 11th, it'll be virtual, very similar to what we've done.
And some cool prize packs.
Good to hear.
Prize pack opportunities as well.
Love that. Check that out again. That'll be kind of a live YouTube stream. And another Beers with Bowen coming up here in about a month. All right, he's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week, and we'll talk to you Monday.